Hello and welcome to Watch from Home Theater, our weekly cozy little live stream here to watch movies together, even while we're apart. I'm Clint Gage, and tonight we are watching 10 Cloverfield Lane. So here's your cue. If you own a copy of 10 Cloverfield Lane, get it queued up to the very beginning, all zeros in the time code before the Paramount logo comes. If you don't own the movie, there are links in the description down below of all the places that you can go rent it if you want to sync up with us as we watch it tonight. So we'll give you a minute to get all that squared away. And in the meantime, joining me this week is Sydney Goodman. Sydney, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited. So excited. I love this movie. So
well, great. But also joining us, of course, our very special guest, director of 10 Cloverfield Lane, Dan Trachtenberg. Dan, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm good. And by the way, I will rest assured to the people that may or may not, or worried about syncing up with the movie, I'm sure that we will not be in sync with what we're saying to what we're watching, as I may be long-winded in some explanations of things. So have no fear.
Great. Well, we'll be sure to check back in with the movie we're watching at a few points. So right. If we can. Well, thanks for joining us from, while we're all appropriately socially distanced here. I'm, of course, in my garage again. It's hot this week, so hopefully you just have to bear with my sweat a little bit. But where are you guys coming from? Dan, is that a teepee in the background there?
It is I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. So that's her,
great.
Her hangout.
That's the hang.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, while everybody's getting the movie queued up, let's just start with a little bit of general business about the film. So can you talk a little bit about the origins of the movie? Because I know it didn't start as a Cloverfield movie.
Right. It started out as a script that Bad Robot bought called The Cellar. That was contained thriller, three-hander, and JJ had and obviously if you're watching this, I'm gonna not worry about spoilers because this is a poor first time to anyway.
So we can just go ahead and give the spoiler alert right here.
Right.
Pause for a minute. Great. That's good.
But JJ had the instinct to do the this is great, but what if in the end aliens? And so he had Damien Chazelle come on to do a rewrite, to do that to the movie. Damien was going to direct it, and then he got a shot to make Whiplash, to make a feature out of the short film that he had done that went off to Sundance and all that stuff. So he left the project, and I was hanging out at Bad Robot, pitching my own stuff, and they were like, "Hey, are you free this summer to make a movie?" Because the conceit at that time was like, let's just make a movie in the backyard. JJ's obsessed with the idea of making movies inside, just in the garage, like in the office, and almost every single one of his movies have had significant sequences done, even Star Wars bits done in the office, on the roof, in a hallway. We've ended up shooting some scenes of this movie in the office, including the car crash. So the idea was, let's go right away. I was actually on the Why the Last Man movie at this time, and thought, I could sneak this in before that movie happened. That movie didn't happen. And then this growing a little bit from the first notion of it, and almost a year working on myself and another writer, this guy named Dan Casey, who didn't end up getting credit on the movie, but did.
Oh no, I think we lost him.
He froze. So this is a good time to mention that, like I said, we're all watching from home here, and we're all dealing with our home internet, and sometimes it's not as good as other times. So we will try and get Dan back as quick as we can.
Yeah. But I mean, while we wait for him, I'm sure we can talk about just like the Cloverfield franchise in general.
Yeah.
Because it is a really, and I was going to piggyback on something that he said about Aliens equals Cloverfield. And I'm curious, Clint, like what, I feel like Cloverfield, I love that franchise. And there's more to it than just like Aliens equals, like Aliens plus Bad Robot Productions equals Cloverfield. You know, like I think that it's really interesting because all of the films do a great job of like identifying the human experience. And I think that you can look at that under a microscope when there is aliens and there is this like disaster moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I love the fact that they're not direct sequels, that they're, you know, and I think we should ask Dan this when he gets back. And it would be hilarious if he's there listening to us just screaming, saying, "No, I can hear you. Can you hear me?" But the idea that it's kind of a spiritual sort of sidetrack.
You're
Hey,
back.
there you are. You're back.
My Wi-Fi went out.
Yep.
But maybe someone hit a switch somewhere and restarted it, and now we'll be good.
And now it's perfect.
That's right. Okay.
Awesome.
There we go. So we were just vamping about Cloverfield in general, and how I was just in the middle of talking about how I like how they're not direct sequels, how there's sort of spiritual connections, and even the Cloverfield paradox had some fun sort of side business to take care of. But anyway, that's where we. I think we.
So I do have a question about that though. Is how much do you establish before you guys started filming or finished, you know, production about? It's obviously 10 Cloverfield Lane is not a sequel, but what does it share with Cloverfield? Like, how much was that established before you guys started everything?
You mean in terms of?
In terms of like, is it the same monster? Are the monsters brothers? Like, is it, like I don't know, like what threads are connected?
Gotcha.
Sibling monsters.
Yeah.
Look, it might morph as it evolves, but when we decided to give it that title, the concept was that it's like Twilight Zone. Except instead of calling it the Cloverfield Zone or whatever, any movie that comes out, you would have Cloverfield like in the title as a fun way of doing it. But the conceit was anthology Twilight Zone. There was definitely discussions. And part of the idea came from a very early on discussion when we were doing the creature design of what if we just made it the Cloverfield, you know? And then, but we decided to specifically not do that. So it always was just, this is a, it just so happens, like if the space one had come out before ours, I think it would have been, it was so distinct, so distinctly different that the Twilight Zone thing would have been a little bit more clear. But I think because we had this creature at the end and it looks like it could be a creature from, you know, like that led to some confusion. But the instinct was for it to be a Twilight Zone thing. Now that may change, and there may be a way, like Black Mirror's Black Museum, like where there could be a thing where suddenly, oh, these are linked in some awesome way. But we evolved into the idea of how cool it could be to be an anthology series. It wasn't how it started, as you guys are aware.
Well, and
Got
that's one of my favorite things about these movies is like you don't need sequels. We just like it's the DNA is all there and similar, and it all makes sense that way. But so we're gonna start the movie here in just a minute. So let me give everybody a little bit of time to get over and hover over the play buttons. Yeah, so we'll get it going if everybody is ready. We can start the movie. I'm gonna go ahead and start counting down. I'm gonna count down from what was it? Normally I just do 3. Should we do 5 this time for some reason?
I think 5. Yeah.
Okay,
I
let's
would
do
that
5
time.
this time.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. That vamping brought to you by a note from last week, where I took 2. I didn't give people enough time.
So this is the Paramount logo.
This is the Paramount
Worked
logo.
long and hard on.
This is actually, in doing these, it is interesting to talk about production logos and Paramount and studio logos, and
I gave a
because
whole
everybody's got like their favorite, like,
Totally.
their opinions on studio logos.
I gave a whole spiel at the premiere about how big a deal the Paramount logo was to me because of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's sort of the first movie logo that you recognize.
Mm-hmm.
So having that in front of something I made, of all the logos, it was definitely,
that's cool.
Of all logos you have, it was a big deal. Yeah. That opening shot was a still image. This was shot at the offices at Bad Robot.
Cool.
That was it. We shot some plates in New Orleans, but they had to make it. That shot wasn't the initial opening for the movie, so we found a way to take those stills and add movement to the water and all that stuff, and then gave us the shot.
So was this still going to be the opening scene though, or did you guys cut things from the beginning?
This scene was the movie had like so many different openings I can't even tell you at different points. The initial opening for the movie was Michelle in the car, or she's buying liquor at a liquor store with her best friend, and we shot that, and she's in the car talking to her boyfriend. She's on her way to go visit his parents for the first time, and she's feeling nervous about that. So it was a very familiar horror movie opening where our protagonist is worried about something frivolous, and then something crazy happens, and now they have to really, but it always felt, it wasn't great, and wasn't really thematic. And Mary and I especially were very driven by the idea that this is someone who would be breaking a cycle in some form by going through this, and someone who was running away from their troubles in the beginning. So it's running away, and at the end of the movie could be running towards trouble, but that be a happy ending. So it was always, we were constantly trying to craft an opening that could support the end that we wanted to get to. And we just took many, many, many stabs. And this was our eventual step. By the way, the actress who played her best friend in the liquor store was Maya Erskine, who's on that show Pen 15, that is amazing.
Cool.
On
Hulu.
Yeah. So good.
One of the other things that I really like about this opening is just all of the exposition and character that it gets across with just sort of visuals and tone. Like there's no real dialogue or sound. Like it's mostly just the score, right, until she gets here to the gas station. Yeah.
And this is Kelvin gas station, which is a fixed. Kelvin is a name that is in all of JJ's movies, and Kelvin was a gas station in Super 8, and there's a Slusho thing there too, which was a better thing.
I noticed that.
But yeah, the Psycho was certainly an inspiration for us. It has a very unique structure, and so this opening felt like a little bit of a embracing our roots with that. The score is very Bernard Herrmann-y and similar to Psycho, but also woman on the run and not knowing well, for us, not knowing where. So the car crash, I guess I should mention also the Bradley Cooper thing.
Yeah, we got to
too.
get some Bradley Cooper business
Yeah.
out of the way before we get to the car crash.
That, I mean, it's not a juicy story. It's like, it's just a voice on the phone. And it used to be her boyfriend. It was no longer her boyfriend. So it was no longer that. I mean, it's her fiance, but it used to be this other character that mattered in a different way. And so we just had 1 million people record this audio, from actor friends to assistants to receptionists at the office to the editor. And it just never was right. And then we were in the editing bay one, and JJ did like a thing that you like dream that happens in Hollywood. He's like, let me just text my friend Bradley, see if he'd want to do it. And he emails Bradley, and then he's like, hey, he's down. Can you just send me a little email of what you're thinking? And I was like, okay. And I wrote Bradley Cooper an email, and then he records it on his phone, obviously. And then that's that. So.
And you said this car crash was done.
So car crash done entirely in the office. There's one shot that's about, because this sequence used to be a oneer where we were on the phone. The phone was more significant in an earlier version than it is now. That shot's entirely CG that we're on right now. All that sequence, the car is real. Everything else was CG. But it was really Mary selling it, with close-ups of her with the camera shaking, car spinning a little bit on a blue screen. And mixed with a few of those other special moments, and that gave us something that was far more aggressive than the initial intention. This shot, where we're opening with her waking up in the cell, was the first one of the entire production. First shot I ever did as a person making a movie for the first time.
Wow!
And there's a book called Making Movies by Sidney Lumet, and he says, his advice to filmmakers is always start on the easiest thing so that you get into a good rhythm and you prove yourself to the crew. And I did the opposite, and I was sort of fixated on because we shot most of the movie in order, so I really wanted to start with her wake. I don't know, I was an idiot. And so I just want to mention before I finish my story, this is 2 takes grafted together. There was a focus buzz right here, and the VFX department right there grafted another take that was in focus when we were on her knee and comped it into the shot. So this took 16 takes, but ultimately it was a combination of one take that had the great movement. And right here, there's a wall that's being moved out of the way to make room for the dolly coming through. That was a very.
I love that kind of stuff.
This was the first one that you did out of the gate.
It was pretty gnarly. It was pretty gnarly. It was not smart, and because we didn't really nail it. We never. And now first shot, and I didn't get it. We ultimately had something that was mostly good, and then we were able to create a VFX solve. So.
So what was the purpose that you guys wanted to shoot in sequence?
Well, I think anyone who's making a movie wishes they could shoot in sequence. You never really can. We lucked out in that props to our production designer, this guy Ramsey Avery, we built this whole structure connected. It was, except for a stairway and one separate room, it all was connected. So there was no we only have this location at this day and this location at that day, and so we this order, and we only had 3 actors, so we didn't have to accommodate, and they're in the whole friggin' movie practically, so we didn't have to accommodate for someone's schedule, so we could shoot in order. So we did. We mostly did. We sort of shot in order of, because the story goes through several shifts to what we believe is the truth, and we sort of shot. We're in this headspace now, and then we go back to Michelle's room. Now we're in this headspace. We shot through all this, and now we're in this headspace in all the locations. Yeah. Her room being half pink was a real deliberation, let me tell you, because on the one hand, it would have been interesting if it was all pink. On the other hand, pink is really, and the DP and I always, because we've worked together since, and we always some of the look of this room pains us because pink doesn't look very good on camera. And so we figured out, well, actually, it's interesting to tell the story of like this guy was doing something was happening in this room that was transforming into something, and he stopped midway for some reason, and then there's something cool about that.
Yeah, there's always a story behind a job that's not done.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, if you're just now tuning in, we are in the middle of 10 Cloverfield Lane here. We just started with Dan Trachtenberg. If you want to queue up your movie, there's a time code that's running on screen. That's where we're at, so you can jump ahead to the right time code there. We're also taking questions from everybody, so wherever you're watching, make sure you leave a comment on YouTube or in Discord, wherever you happen to be watching this. And we will try to get to it and ask it on air here. Now, this introduction here of Howard, John Goodman's character, I thought was like, there's something that's really cool and kind of kaiju about it. Honestly, like just the legs coming down in front of cameras. So I mean, just the idea that this is sort of a successor to Cloverfield, or it's part of the same universe. Like, there's something that really struck me about his introduction here.
That's awesome. Yeah, did I wrestle with this. This was challenging because there's so much, like, to not show his face and to show it was obviously the intention, and it's a big reveal moment, but it also puts so much stank on it that it always felt like, is this too over the top? Like, this is crazy. When you're inside it, it just felt so cheesy. Like, I don't know, but ultimately, I think we struck the right. It was just finding the right take and the right, and really, that was also, this scene was what we went to find the piece of score for his theme, and the idea behind it was to find an instrument that was a melody that was as haunting as Once Upon a Time in the West has that theme that reoccurs throughout, and then it's revealed what it's associated with, and it's horrifying. And so we really wanted to give him something, a distinct instrument, or can't really hear it now. But
that is a wonderful transition though into, there's a question here from somebody watching on IGN's YouTube channel. Forgive me for mispronouncing this. Toalfie asks, what was it like working with Bear McCreary on the score for this?
Awesome. Huge. I was a huge fan of his work.
He's done a lot too.
A lot. He's prolific. Right. But loved the Battlestar score. He also, the thing that like he could not get over. He did the score for Step Up 3D, and there's one cue in that movie that is absolutely beautiful, and I reference it to him all the time, and made him like send it to me. So I was so looking forward to working with him, and loved the process. And we're both big movie score fans. And I'm not a music person. I don't have a good music vocabulary, but I do have a good movie score vocabulary. So constantly, my ability to communicate with him was like, let's do some Jerry Goldsmith twinkly things here to make it feel like it's sci-fi or what, and he was like super into it and spoke my language, which was great. There's a piece coming up here. You'll see that's not as sharp as the end result. It was digitally sharpened. That's the bottom part of that screen is digital. Is a comp. The clothing in the
sheets
foreground
and stuff. Yeah,
because there was a continuity. We shot the scene differently than how it was cut. So to cover up that, we put the bottom of the screen gave away that it was like her bed was still together. It wasn't whatever. So we comped that in to disguise it.
Do you think there's something really, really cool about her character here in that, like, in talking about the when we first meet her and you establish that she's running away from trouble, but then like here I like that she's so actively immediately trying to get out of the situation.
Let me tell you, it was the thing that we all loved. It's why we wanted to make it. It's why everyone was excited about it. It's also the thing that made the storytelling challenging, because the easiest thing to do is 0 to hero, right? The easiest thing to do is incapable becomes capable. But what we all liked is showing how capable she is. flawed but capable. So it forced us to actually find the thing that I was just talking about at the beginning of the movie, is that her story has to be an emotional one, that she has to have some emotional flaws, the things that she's not dealing with, that she has to confide into us and to Emmett later in the movie. And that's what she's dealing with. It can't be that she's inept and then becomes ept. I don't know. But I loved, initially the scene was just she is holding the thing and then he comes in and she stabs him. I always loved our addition to realize he's not going to come. I'm just going to wait here all day and he's never going to come. Like, I have to draw him in. I always thought it was really cool. He's about to walk in and talk about the like medicine that he gave her, and this was a whole thing too, like finding what's the right medicine. And I have a doctor brother-in-law who told me one thing, and then the onset medic told me something different. And I don't remember who we decided with, but one of them said, "Oh, it's the wrong one," when they saw the movie. And it's like, well, you're the expert. Someone told me this is the thing.
Somebody who went to med school told me.
Right. Yeah, that Toradol. Okay, is what we ended up with. So someone can type into the chat if we got it right or wrong. Right. Yeah.
So I always found this really interesting that he like explains everything except for her leg being chained to the wall. Why not have him like lie about why he would chain her leg to the wall? Like, he just kind of doesn't mention it.
I could be wrong, but I feel like he says something, it's for your own safety. He says something dismissive, like my internal logic is he didn't want her to do what she did. She sort of proves him right in like he didn't want her to get up and
from like I'm abducting you and not a good person, totally makes sense why he would chain her to the wall.
Right. But from a helper.
From like a convincing her that he's on her side. I found it interesting that
just why
he didn't even bother tackling that.
Totally. And which is also why she doesn't fully believe. Like, we're in this moment, we're skeptical and not believing. The model for the movie is Misery. Misery and Dead Calm are the two closest comps. But the difference for us is those movies is we're believing the story and then we're slowly doubting it as it goes, or we're unsure, are we with someone scary or not? This is the opposite. This is, I'm with a psycho. I need to get out, but then slowly but surely, but maybe I've misjudged. Maybe I'm not. And maybe there's, so it was key for us to not trust and not believe from the get. Definitely a lot of over explanation and under explanation. Like, this scene went through a lot of different edits too, where are we over explaining, are we under explaining? And
there's something great. There's something great too about Goodman's performance there too. Is like you can tell he's kind of holding back a little bit, which is really interesting.
Yeah, he was not an idea until slightly later in the process, and now it's obvious. Like, how could we not have thought of him right away? But the thing that triggered for me was thinking of him, and then I watched some interviews he did. He doesn't love doing press, and I watched a long form interview with him. I love that look. I friggin' love that look.
So proud.
Yeah, I really wanted that to be. I don't know if that made it into a trailer, but I always felt like that's such a great, creepy look for a trailer. But he was like very agitated with whoever was interviewing him, but trying to still go on with the interview. And it's like that was that's great. And just using him in a way that we don't often see him. That he's sort of on Roseanne. He was America's dad and so lovable, and it was great to make him a horrible dad.
It's one way of putting it.
Yeah. And Mary, I got to say, Mary, this whole section had to be in such high emotion, and there were so many times where, like, remember she grabbed the phone and then there was some monofilament with tape. Monofilament's like fishing wire with, like suddenly flashed the camera when she picked it up, and we were all like, oh no, because she was so awesome and in it. And she ripped the tape up. Like, we didn't say anything. She just somehow instinctually knew, like, but she was still in the zone. It was like this magical, I don't know how great actors do it, and she's one of them, where like she's on the one hand doing something that is as if she's completely unaware there's a camera there, and then on the other hand, completely aware there's a camera there, and does things that are for the production needs, not necessarily the character. Like, it's just mind blowing.
Going back to what you're talking about with John Goodman sort of being an option, showing up kind of later in the process. Here's another question from somebody watching on Cinefix on YouTube. Daniel RS asks, how much time did you have for rehearsal with everybody before the production started up?
We were very lucky due to what I was describing earlier, where we built this whole set. And so while we were doing the finishing touches, all the actors had arrived in New Orleans, and we were able to rehearse in the spaces themselves, unfinished, but still. So we had possibly 2 weeks to really go through it. We really just went through several key scenes and didn't overdo it, but we were able to get enough of a handle on it that gave me and the DP some lead time in understanding what the blocking was probably going to be based on those rehearsals. And it was the way to do a first experience, that's for darn sure, because we were very prepared. This scene we reshot with Emmett. The first time we shot it, we changed some of the dialogue. And the first time we shot it, the camera was looking down on him. And I just felt like, I mean, the whole effort was, I wanted people to trust him. I don't know that that was ever an accomplishable task, because we knew what we were doing with the movie. And I wanted to try and, well, I liked that we weren't doing the thing where, and then Emmett turns out bad. And like, I wanted it to be like, no, he's an out. I want to enjoy these two people that have to deal with this. I want to enjoy the movie as much as possible with them. I don't think the structure totally allowed for that. And I was trying to fight it so much, but I try to help solve it by putting the camera more on his level. And we added a little bit more humor to what he was saying. But ultimately, maybe some people, because they're familiar with John Gallagher, like, will instantly be more okay with him. But it's a movie where we don't know what's happening, and we're going to have some distrust, and it may take longer. And I just probably should have let that go, but I couldn't.
So I have a question, but it might be too spoilery. So if it is, we can wait and you can answer it later. But so Emmett, it's alluded that like he obviously helped Howard build this, right? But then we also learned that Howard had, let's say, other occupants.
Mm-hmm.
I always wondered, like, did Emmett know what he was building? Like, was he really that naive that this was just like a doomsday preppers situation?
Yeah.
Like, how naive and how compliant was he with Howard and his plans?
Yeah, and we can get to the full answer later.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it, put it out there while we're talking about, do we trust Emmett or not?
Got it. Yeah, I'm happy to answer whenever you guys deem appropriate.
Okay.
I'll let Clint go because I'm really bad at spoilers, so Clint will know when appropriate.
But wait, Howard just says no touching, and which we now all know is what we are not supposed to do when we're in quarantine. So
right.
Very
that was the funny thing in rewatching this movie and first meeting Emmett. I was like, oh look, he's got quarantine hair like I do. Like, he just needs a haircut real bad. But then later we find out he's only been there a couple of days.
I was gonna say, yeah. I loved the way this scene was cut, and this was the day after we shot it. The editor had put this guy Stefan Grube. He's a good friend. He's awesome. Just got the new Star Wars movie, but this was his first pass of the scene. Did this awesome thing where they're having this conversation, and then he refers to the bathroom and privacy, whatever. I don't remember all the lines. And then we cut to the wide and reveal, it's right that like that was not the initial intention. Was that it would be disguised. And there were some passes that other people working on the movie were like, oh, we should see right away. We want to understand. Get a wide shot. We enter the room. And when you're making a mystery movie, you don't always want to enter on the side and the details, those things back. And that was, I thought, such an expertly done cut of the scene, and was there from the beginning.
I will say I love the way that this film is cut, and we've done and that shot right there is just just overhead, the tiny little bathroom, the toilet that's sitting in the shower. It's just So, but the way that the film is cut, and particularly as we're getting towards this first dinner scene where the three of them are at the table, because the way that it cuts back and forth, a conversation with three people standing in a circle talking is one of the sneakiest, like difficult things to cover in an interesting way and to shoot right. And I think he did an amazing job, because like the sort of shifting dynamic between these three characters and who the conflict is between at the moment, and where the third person stands in that conflict and everything is really so. As we get closer to this first scene where they're at the dinner table, I'm just talking about like the way that the movie is cut and how it sort of illustrates the power shift that's kind of happening with the three of them.
Thank you.
I'm really interested.
I'll tell you. I just want to mention too, this shot of her. We were in the wide. It was this movie has a million split screens in it. Using one take for one portion of the frame and another take for a portion of the frame. And this scene is gnarly because the bottom half of Mary is one take and the top half of her is another take. Because it's all about because Goodman kept picking up like a spoon in one take and a spatula in it, like he kept just grabbing different props. So when he's in the foreground, so it was there he's got a wooden, it was messing with it. So, but we got to pick the best performance. So we picked one take for her top, one take for her bottom. Mary, once again, so on it, so professional, nailed her mark every time. Settled in the exact same way on that mark that we were able to do that, top half and a bottom half, because of how rad she is.
I wonder if she saw all the different stuff that he was picking up and was like, I better keep still.
she very well may have. She is that good. This was the welcome mat. I remember really deliberating on, should the welcome mat be facing us or facing, like, is the welcome mat for when you come in through that and you enter, or is it welcome mat for when you're leaving to go to the outside? And I think the issue was, it makes more, well, the first thing I said makes more sense, but it felt like it was too presented to camera that way. So I don't know. I think some of this, by the way, take everything I said with a grain of salt, because this is 4 years ago. Actually, we shot it 6 years ago, probably. So my memory is fuzzy. Coming up, we're going to see a shot of these dead pigs. We had shot practical. We built dead pig prosthetics. JJ didn't think it was gory enough, so this was redone entirely CG. This whole shot, that's CG. The pigs, which was great. I love that he pushed for that, because that's definitely way gnarlier than what we had initially.
There was actually, let me find it here in this. There's Jensen Epic on Discord asked that if there was an R-rated cut of this. Says, I heard there was an R-rated cut of the film, and what made it R-rated, if that's true.
Not really. I mean, not in a.
If you're having to gore up your pigs, maybe it wasn't.
No, the pigs were fine. There was, the first time we showed it to MPA, they said it would get an R. It's not like it's an R. It's like, this would have an R. Here's a suggestion of how it could not. And we always wanted it to be PG-13. So, and it was just the amount of, it was nothing with It was the amount of blood at the end when he's grabbed onto her ankles. And there was a shot, there just was too much blood in one of those. So we got to just get rid of some blood.
Get rid of some blood.
There's no like the R-rated cut with the extra cool stuff. Like there was none of that.
Every take you did an alt with more just bad language.
The RAD was really pushing me to shoot, and we did shoot Emmett from the front getting shot. I guess that's the spoiler that you didn't want me to say, but
that's fine.
Yeah.
We did the spoiler alert earlier.
Yeah. But I was like, I'm never going to use it. That's not the way to do it. It's going to be this way. He's like, Dan, I'm telling you, you never know. We got to cover it. We're here. We're already doing it. We got to get it. And so we did but obviously we didn't use it, but his girl, John Gallagher Jr.'s girlfriend was on set watching. Her boyfriend getting shot in the head over and over, and she like had to leave and go. Like it was like a horrible, distressful thing, as you can imagine. Like because it was so he was so good. He took that well. No one watching the movie sees it, but we were all like, oh my god, it was very upsetting. So I mean, theoretically, there could be an R-rated cut with that in it, but it would not be the right way to
just add a little extra blood and it's R-rated all of a sudden.
Yeah. What else about this scene?
Yeah.
I'm trying different jokes.
This is where we discover that he hurt himself trying to get in. So
Right.
is the backstory there that he?
Okay.
That
Yeah. So should I answer your question now?
Yeah, answer my question.
Yeah. I mean,
Can you answer my question?
I don't know.
Go right ahead.
No, in my mind, I don't. I mean, he is a naive dude. He's all shucksy in his worldview. But I don't know that there would have ever have been a coinciding moment of him initially helping him build this thing with captors. So that I don't know there ever would have needed to be an overlap, or he would have like I think his belief would be. I mean, frankly, it's what I'm thinking now. I wish I had a doomsday bunker. And he was probably thinking, Howard's a smart guy for doing this. And there's lots of people that have bunkers. So he just figured he was one of them. This felt like a traditional structure. He would not have had to see any handcuffs or anything weird during the construction of it. Is that?
Yeah, no, that totally answers it. That makes sense. Because I guess if you can build it, it's not going to like maintain it. He's not like
he's not there
tending to the garden or
exactly.
anything.
He wasn't there helping him paint the room or anything. No, he just was there to build it. And I think its first occupants were his family, which tracks. So.
Oh, interesting. I never even thought about that. His family actually being real.
I mean, it's one of those things. I think that's the case, but
yeah.
I'm not.
Well, he wears a wedding ring. I noticed that when he was opening airlock.
Yeah. I think he has a wife and kid. I think what we don't know is, does he still? Are they still with us? Especially his daughter. We don't know. Did they get away from him because he was acting crazy? Or that's the fun thing about the movie too. I mean, it's so much of Michelle and Emmett's experience is based on like just taking his word for it, and so we have to as well. And so it's like, how reliable of a narrator is Howard? Right. So, exactly.
Got a real quick fun question here from Corwin Webb, who's watching on IGN YouTube. Wants to know if that hoodie is the movie's crew shirt. I noticed it has the shower curtain ducky, but it looks a little different.
Yeah, this is probably the first time I'm wearing this.
In the last 6 years?
It was a crew sweatshirt. And yes, that's the duck that's on the shower curtain. Her suit initially was just red and silver and described that way. And wait, I'll go back to this.
Well, we'll get to that.
With the beginning of the scene.
That's good work, Corwin Webb, for noticing that.
Yeah.
It's some eagle eyes there. But yeah, this is a scene that I think it really establishes a lot of stuff for the film.
So the reference for that is Jaws and Seven, and almost every director I ever talked about shooting dinner table scenes, they all go Seven. We're like, yeah, Seven. Like everyone always looks at Seven. And Jaws also was great. But initially, this scene with him, we shot the movie under the temp name of Valencia, because he initially right here had a speech about the siege of Valencia, and it was a really menacing, all in one take, slowly pushing in on him. Done beautifully, challenging to do all in one. He did it. It was the whole thing. But the movie was running really long, and that's a really long part. And the dinner, this is a whole short film in and of itself. It's a long scene. So we really were trying to take stuff out of it. That was a really likely candidate. We didn't know that we could pull it off. And then one day, and just cycling through, watching take after take over and over again, trying to find something. The editor and I found this little moment. We both kind of gasped at the same time, where he sat down and had this weird moment of indigestion or whatever it was, and he like had this weird look that was like, if we have him sit down at the table and he gives this look, we are already on edge and unsure of what this guy's thinking of us, and that does all the work that an entire speech. It was sort of, I kept joking like it's like Indy pulling out the gun in Raiders, like they had the entire scene storyboarded and they were going to shoot it, and then Harrison has the idea of let's just pull the gun out. Actually, I've heard a variety of stories about that, but anyway, this his Goodman's menacing look was our pulling the gun out of the holster.
So, yeah, it's just a whole ton of shorthand in one look.
Yeah.
But I love how this scene is cut, just because on the three different axes that you have to cover this conversation on, just and especially this cut here where she laughs and then you cut to over her shoulder looking back at John to see his reaction, specifically mad at her, and it changes the whole dynamic of the scene.
Yeah, every cut is intentional.
Yeah,
which is why there's so many split screens in this, because it was like the cutting pattern is so good, but this take of her in this way, like we had to keep on manipulating it. It was all about which shots are they together in, or her and Emmett together in. Which shot is he included in? When are we just with them? We're in their close-ups, the long lensy close-ups, where we're sort of forgetting that he even exists. We're just in their moment, and then it was all dancing that dance. I will say, some people, it was trickier. One of screening for some friends weren't quite getting how he was getting so angry, and we had a reshoot coming up, and genius editor once again. I hope he's watching, because I'm really, but had the great idea of all I need to do, because we recreate a little corner of this room just for one shot. He's like, Dan, just get me a close up of when they pass the salt, of her hand and his hand touching, just cutting into a close up of that after he's earlier said no touching, like the power of the close up. One thing for them to do it in a wide and whatever, but just cut in after we hadn't been in tight for that long did all of the work for us, and changed every reaction we had when we screened it after that. So a really great call. The close-up of his hands doing that was also a reshoot for the same purpose, and it was the hands of our camera operator, because we couldn't get Goodman back in LA for when we were quickly doing these. So that is somebody else's hands.
That's great.
But for the same purpose of like creating that anxiety and to feel that tension building.
Well, and cutting that in with how she's looking at him, and like it's
coming up. There's this moment where she grabs the keys, and then we reveal that she has the keys. We had planned for one shot where it sort of booms down under the table to reveal. And then I had this idea of, let's push in from the sides. You'll see in a moment. This is going to come up. The camera operator, and people were like, I think we were running long, and they're like, you don't really need, people wanted to go home. They're like, you don't really need two shots of you're never going to use both. And it's like, it'd be great if we should, it's like they waged a bet that I'll never use the extra shot. And we used both, so that's why I had to tell the story. I love this conversation about board games.
So does Michelle see Emmett as her ally at this point, or does she see him as a tool to her leaving?
I think right now he's a tool, but starting to warm up. In general, I don't know that it takes a long time for someone to really trust, but you start to,
especially when you're stuck in a bunker with them. So
yes, but it's probably hoping he is, and getting the vibe that this guy might be more naive about things, and so in that way could be trustworthy. That is not on Howard, certainly not from this dynamic, not on Howard's side against her.
Well, it certainly shows. I feel like it shows too how capable she is again, because like everything shifted gears after she sees the keys and then gets the plan, and then she's all of a sudden being nice to Emmett too, and so it's like it is, this is all part of her sort of just trying to feel out the where the cage is electrified, right? Like,
should say too, like the inspiration for the look of this dinner table scene is largely based on, there's a photographer named Gregory Crutzen that a lot of his stuff served inspiration for 6 Feet Under. And the whole aesthetic of this is very him. I love, realized I could do it full screen. Forgot about that.
I have to say though, I find it very stressful how forceful, only because I'm like, if she couldn't get out and she's seeing all of these different ways that she could try and escape, like I would just be stuck in the bunker forever. Like she's so, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, but how she starts as being already resourceful and already kind of like this badass. Am I allowed to say that?
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I guess we're watching a PG-13 movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they can say it about it.
PG-13.
You only get
right?
one F, and then everything else is.
Right. So let's sit on that one. Let's not use it yet.
Yeah. There's the second shot of the keys.
The second shot of the keys.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of why there's so much anxiety when you watch a thriller, suspenseful horror movie thing is because you're not in a dangerous situation. You're watching danger, and it's so hard to. But I think you would find when you are in gnarly situations, I know I tend to immediately go to how do I fix it? What do I do? I rarely am I in the state that we often see in horror movies of like, oh, I don't know, and I'm crying and I'm freaking out, whatever. Because it's like you just start moving. You start quickly solving, how do I fix the situation? And that's what Mary and I talked about quite a bit, and I think almost more realistic. It feels ambitious, and you're envious of that because you're so comfortable at home, and you're like, I can't imagine. But when your adrenaline's pumping and whatever, I do actually think that's a more realistic depiction of what would happen.
Oh my gosh,
she's just ready to spring right into action and grab a bottle and smash it over his head and take off. Like,
there's a lot of math here, and how many footsteps, how many keys can we show, and how the pinnacle reference for suspense storytelling is the bridge in I almost said Lean on Me and Stand By Me.
Stand By Me.
With how many more that if you watch that sequence, that and the bathroom scene in Witness. With the kids hiding in the bathroom stall and they're kicking one by one. It's a classic scene, but it's like, it really stretches. There's way more bathroom stalls than are actually in the thing. And and Stand By Me, there's shots where the train, they're so far away, they're never going to make it. And the train is right on top of them. And now they have winter time. And it constantly stretches that. This was
this is a reshoot.
This was a reshoot as well.
That's one of the things I want to check back in with is in the development of this, and at what point it became a Cloverfield movie, and at what point were there anything that you needed to go back and
Nope.
and
there was only one thing, and I'll tell you when it happens, that was added after we had the notion to give it that title. When I say reshot it, we had shot the scene, and when we were in the initial production, but all the woman said over and over again was, let me in, let me in, let me in. And it was actually pretty great, and it worked, and everyone noted this scene as like, oh, we love that scene. But we just had the feeling, and JJ really pushed, I feel like it could be better. And it always had bothered me that she's just repeating the same thing over and over again. And so we redid it. It was not hard. It was just a door with a black behind her and a light shining, and we had her say some things that made it way more horrible, and way more challenging a decision for Michelle to make. So
when the it only touched me a little, like that kind of that's kind of a Cloverfield specific thing to something that was established in the first Cloverfield movie, right? With the monsters touching them and then people kind of get sick.
I think that's happenstance. I mean, because I mean, it could be the creature. It could have been the creature. It could have been the gas that was coming down. That the ship
that
used
we see later.
End, that the gas only got her a little bit, and so I wish that this scene could have been one take coming around him, but we had to check in with her, and it always bummed me out that I couldn't just hold on him. But I will say there's a couple longer takes in the movie. I'll mention again, and JJ was very like, we could just cut. We don't need to, I was like, no, but isn't it working well that you're with it? He's like, that he had like a whole thing, oneers don't show off and all that stuff. And I was like, but in Force Awakens, there's an awesome oneer where you're like with Finn on the ground, the TIE fighter.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about, dude?
Don't you tell me not to do a oneer.
Yeah, like it's so good, And he was like, "What?" I don't even know he processed that was an awesome.
Yeah.
Even in Mission Impossible 3, there's the great where it's not terribly long, but the idea that like drone whizzes by twice and while you're with him, it's so great. And the editor was cutting the newer Rise of the Skywalker, and he was telling me, told me nothing, but he did mention one point. There's so many. Oh my God, Dan! There's so many dope oneers. I'm like, I can't believe JJ's really doing awesome, And I was like, okay, we'll see if they last.
We'll see how long they last.
And they didn't. I mean, I think they did cut into a lot of them, which I think is awesome and very admirable about him. There's some that I just had to like. I was like, please let me keep this. But I thought it was very impressive that he was like, the most important thing is the story, and it's not a time to show off and all that. So I thought it was a good philosophy in general.
So here, the other thing that the scene at the door sort of did is and you mentioned this briefly before, but talking about shifting the headspace of the movie. Yep. So we've very quickly shifted from Howard is a monster, and he's capturing me here, to like Howard might be a reasonable guy because he's not murdering me for what I just did to him, and
yep, it confirms his story. So that's check that box. Like, he's not lying. There's definitely something happening outside. There's no way he's like asked a woman to, at least in Mark. That's so extravagant. And then the next bit, he gives an explanation, a more plausible explanation for how he encountered her, and admitting that he was at fault. And so now we are more likely, I would imagine, still skeptical, but more likely to think, okay, well, he is telling the truth, so then maybe I do need to go. Maybe this movie's going to swerve a different way now that I have to be edge about, and
Well, and I think this scene's interesting because you're following, like, it feels like as an audience member, I'm following a similar idea of maybe what Michelle's going through, especially now that she's about to have a needle up to this guy's face, and how much power that theoretically gives her.
Yeah, exactly. She could do something to him and doesn't now.
Where up to this moment, I feel like she's taken sorry to cut you off, but I feel like she's taken every chance that she could, and here there's clearly an opening and she doesn't take it.
Yes, totally. Yeah, I think this was always there. The thing that I remember the addition we made was the spray can, because the ending didn't always have. She was escaping a different way, and we were trying to figure out how can we make that more clever. And I love the way his speech about the spray can. This was always, I don't know if it's I'm not listening to it, but I can't remember the score here. But the reference, the temp track we had here was the Lost, swell. I'm
rewatching Lost right now, so I'm very
yes.
This was a longer scene too, where he really explained, even prior to this moment, he gave a much more technical, deliberate explanation of what he believed was happening outside, and talked about working in satellites and Russia, and it was a more grounded explanation. And we did a pass. The whole movie is a struggle to figure out how can we make the ending feel like a swerve and exciting, that, oh my God, and a rug pull, but also not like F this movie. Some people definitely feel like we F this movie, like we didn't accomplish it. And I hope for someone it does work. And part of that was like having him reference alien stuff in the beginning, and in a way that makes us feel like this sounds crazy. He's a crazy guy for saying it, but then in the end, when it's there, it feels like it's a setup and payoff, and hopefully smooth the curve into the ending. But Oh man, there was a whole thing. What was the deal with this picture? God, there was a thing where audiences were not getting that the girl he's showing in the picture here in this scene is the same girl in the Polaroids. That's what it was. The solve, we were like, I don't know how to solve. Like, it's the same actress. Like, how, they're just not perceiving it. The solve, once again, I think it was our editor's idea, putting a mole on her face, and so instantly there was recognition. This was the other reshoot that came with when we changed the opening. It was all about the opening in this scene, and I think I'm very heartened that we finally got to a place where her backstory is quite meaningful and creates the real estate for her decision at the end to be moving.
Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation visually. Anyway, just having them in two different spaces with two different color schemes.
Yeah, I really wish we could have done. Almost could. The structure didn't support. I wanted to shoot like a split screen of them, like organic, not like I'm doing a crazy visual effect, but like we could organically like shoot from the hallway and see the door frame splitting them as they're talking both sides. But it was the walls were too wide and there wasn't enough room. And a lot of, because we built the structure, we really also tried to dance the dance of getting wide enough where some sequences felt like we're watching a little diorama of these people that are contained in this box, but you also don't want to break. We made a very conscious decision early on to not do panic room, to not do like we're flying through walls and we're coming, which is certainly a way to do a contained thriller like this, but we really wanted to feel like we are stuck inside these walls and not have the liberty to fly through them. So it was always this weird dance to figure out like how wide can we go before we feel like we break, but also where it's visually interesting and gets us a composition that is saying something. So we ended up not doing that split screen is the point of the story, as you can see.
But this does read very prison to me, like very like they're in prison cells and
totally
talking at night when the guard's not around.
After
Yes.
lights out, right?
Yes, for sure.
I guess camp might be a more pleasant memory, but
not as apropos as what it actually is. Yeah, this is a comedy. This was a reshoot. Some of it's reshoot, some of it's shot. So her hair was a whole continuity thing, and there's some ADR stuff. And I guess I'm ruining the movie for people, but for me, really, I'm ruining it. For, like, I don't want people to know how the sausage. This was an experience. ADR for me. I obviously had never made a movie, so but I was always allergic to the notion of it. And to me, working on it, it always stuck out. I was like, we can't do this. There's no way. And it never bumped anyone. And I've certainly more aware of it when I'm watching other movies now. And in one moment, recognizing that's ADR. And also like, I guess I'm cool with that. Like it doesn't use, you're so thirsty for information if you're watching a good movie that kind of thing doesn't bump. But there are I'll point out too, there's a huge section where Howard is speaking about a lot, and we are not on his face. We are on their faces the whole time, and it's all ADR.
That's why they call it movie magic.
Yep. But they're both great here. And they were the loveliest people to work with. It was a good hang on top of a good professional experience.
That's great.
Yeah.
And actually, there's another comment here from Tomato Sauce. Wondering, Tomato Sauce is curious about the casting and what made Goodman and Winstead and Gallagher right for these parts. Were they always, I mean, you kind of addressed it with Goodman already, but were they always the actors that were you writing for them?
No, well, I didn't write, we didn't initially write, but
right.
But yeah, but even when I first went on, Mary is someone that we would hope that we could have do the movie. Didn't think we could. Also, I think also a little worried about she was in The Thing, so I think I was sort of like The Thing remake. It's similar kind of deal and was worried that she might not want to double down on it. We read a lot of actresses for the part, couldn't quite find the right person, and I watched her in the movie called Smashed, which is a great movie, and she is amazing. So good that I made her, not me, I don't know if I made her, but I asked her to literally, that thing that you did in that one scene Smashed, I'll point it out, but do that here, please. Like, it's so good, you know. It's not till the end of the movie, but so that was like a dream, and she was super down. It was awesome. And John Gallagher Jr. was also like, the whole time we were like, it's John Gallagher Jr. type or whatever, you know. And then eventually we read a lot of people, let's go to John Gallagher Jr. People were auditioning with sides from a scene that was cut out of Short Term 12. I'd say some people were. Some people were auditioning with those sides. Right. Some people got the real thing. We accidentally sent his agent the audition scenes and that were from Short Term 12. And his agent called up and was like, we already booked this part, so what are we auditioning for here? And it was a horrible apology had to be made and all that. But so, yeah, he was what we all hoped we could have. And he loves this kind of movie and has subsequently been in a bunch of genre movies of its ilk. And just, yeah, super fun. And Goodman, I explained earlier, it was not the first idea, but as soon as we had the idea,
the most obvious.
Like, the most obvious, totally. All that shaking is people either shaking the wall with their hand, or kids like vibrating toys, and they're stuck like underneath the furniture or whatever to like get the vibration.
I love that. I like that's the, you talk about ruining the movie but like that's those sort of like weird little ingenious fixes that go such a long way.
There's so many poor man's versions of things for a movie of this scale. Lots of fishing wire attached to things to pull things out. There's so much fishing wire. So this coming up, see, we're on his face here. I describe what happened because we wanted to make it more alien-y, less grounded. Okay, now we're off of him. This is all ADR. Whole section. It's a long time, guys. Still going.
It's still going.
Time.
Still there.
And I'm like, people are gonna know that we're just like plugged in something, and then we're back. Great sound team working on the movie that made that stuff work. That if they weren't as good, it would not have been as good.
How much time has passed at this point while they're in the bunker?
Let me tell you how many people asked me that while it was. I will answer that in a second. I just want to point out there's a thing that people always say is a flaw, and it is not a flaw. He's describing it right here. Later on in the movie, she goes to the air ducts to get into this thing, and everyone said, like, why would he build this thing that he could never get to? It's explained right here. There's a hatch for him to enter that room, and something has fallen on top of it, so he can't open it. So now there is a way. He built an access point to that, and he can't. So that was not an oversight. Anyway, I know it's thin, but it exists, and so take that, CinemaSins. So you said how much time? Yeah, I mean, that was for me. The answer was always, and because continuity is always at wardrobe, like makeup with her, like her nail, like everyone needs to know. And for me, it was always just a general lot of time. Now it's been a while. Like, cause the point is to not actually know. She doesn't know. We don't know. It just wants to emotionally feel like it's not been a couple of days now. Now it's been a while. I think the montage sequence is like they've been down there. That's all that
they have a rhythm.
Yeah. But telling the story with her nails tell the story a little bit of like, oh, now they're being the polish is chipped away slowly but surely in every helps tell the story. So I never want anyone to be like, oh, this is 3 weeks in or what,
Yeah.
Just feels totally. Like.
Well, all those little details just end up painting a much bigger picture by the time you do it. But
we had a constant, I don't say running gag. It's not that funny, but where she because she played John McClane's daughter and Die Hard, two of them. And she kept on having to she had to do this. It's got to be Die Hard, but it was tough to get the space to be that small. But she never knew if the camera was going to be full frame on her, so she wasn't sure, can I wear socks or not? So I constantly, it was can you go full McClane or half McClane on the socks or bare feet.
This is really good to remind it. Oh, no, go ahead.
That there was a letterhead there that said Bold Futura, which was a link to the ARG that was happening leading up to the release of the movie that was linking this to Cloverfield. So that was a reshoot. We added that in, and the link there, I misspoke earlier in saying there's nothing in this movie, but Howard works for the satellite company. Oh God, is the name of the company Bold Futura? No, I don't remember.
It starts with an F, I think, but it's a company that Rob was going to leave to New York to work for, right?
There's there's a satellite that drops at the end of Cloverfield that causes the thing, and so he works in satellite, he works for the same company, and it was the same part of the ARG leading up to the release of the initial Cloverfield. Mm-hmm. At one point, we had shot a great jump scare here where a dead bird slams into frame as we're looking up at the sky. I was so excited for it. It was such a good jump scare. But JJ was like, it's a little convenient that the thing falls out of the sky in the 2 inches of thing. And I was like, fair point. I can't argue that.
I do love though I was fully expecting that to happen in the scene. So like there is a really kind of the function of the scene sort of becomes like assume there's going to be and so there's just tension that you don't ever get to release. And,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying, and I love that in general. I learned there's a great sequence in the movie Boogeyman 2. It's a direct-to-video sequel directed by this guy, Jeff Beaton, who's an editor. And he directed that movie and maybe another, but he edits he edited The Ring and The Grudge. He was and he's still cutting awesome. And that sequence was one or with a girl, it was Mae Whitman, going around a room as the things come. It's like a classic cat and mouse thing, like the Jurassic Park kitchen sequence. And the jump scare never, the scene ends and the audience laughed because the jump scare never came. We were all expecting the jump scare to come and it never. And that made such an impression on me of yes, that's the way to do it because there's so much math in this. We're all. I just want to point out that help thing was also another huge deliberation of is help spelled? Is it pla or is it help? What direction?
We need to read it or
it was a whole. So there we put.
Oh, there's the
mole. You got it. Yep, that's a digital mole.
Well, hey, listen. Before we get too far away from something that you mentioned a second ago, there's a comment. Radio Girl 95 who's watching on IGN. Wants to know, were you involved in the ARG at all, and what did you think about it?
Radio Girl, that name was a part of the ARG. I didn't craft it myself, but this guy named Dave Baronoff, who was the head of the video game department and big part of the ARG for the initial Cloverfield, I believe, and he took it and ran with it. But I definitely got to geek out with him and come up with some clever stuff. And we recorded stuff, which I'm good for the ARG, some audio things. Once again, there's the birthmark.
Mole.
There's the mole, yeah. God, this was a bear. Yeah, trying to make this explanation all same.
Oh, so creepy.
And then going from the picture with the shirt to the shirt, yeah. Something creepy about Paris to me. It's something about I don't know what. This was one of the days I was the most nervous about the dance, knowing that what we wanted it to be, and unsure if Goodman was gonna be cool with dancing for camera, and me, and what do I do if he kind of doesn't really, if he just kind of shuffles a little, I need to get him to really. But it was great. We played him 3 songs that we knew were already clear, and he picked the song.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a and again we've gone through another one of those headspace shifts. Obviously the help scene did that for us.
Yeah.
But like, it's such a weird thing. James, like, I'm always in a musical mood, and it's like, oh god, that's terrifying now. Whereas like 2 scenes ago, it would have been like, kooky old guy.
Totally. Okay, right. Shower curtain. Okay, this is what I was going to say earlier about the shower curtain. So, yeah, it was always described as this red and silver thing with the duct tape and the red thing. And great JJ note of like, we gotta like give her a happy face. Like, it would be so great if you make that iconic, and it's something that in the face of Armageddon, she's wearing a happy. But we couldn't be a happy face because like Watchmen had the happy face. And so it was a whole Megillah of figuring out what could be the thing without being like, it's just there for had to get the rights to 16 Candles. Or Pretty in Pink. Yeah, I made the same mistake.
You made the same mistake.
It's just, we did that whole movie.
Were there any other options for the shower curtain besides the rubber duck that got close to making it?
I think we did try happy faces. And we just tried a million different kinds of duck. Like, is it a million ducks all over it? Is it one? Is it just the duck face? The duck holding the umbrella? We finally figured out, But yeah, there was. I'd have to look up more, but
it was a whole thing.
So this is the oneer that he was trying to get me to cut, but it wasn't boarded this way. It was sort of found in the way the camera was like resetting, and I was like, actually we think. Maybe I was attached to that, but also I just love that there was this fun little spy mission that we're going on. And to me, it injected a bit of like, ooh, now they're like sneaking around, and we're more. This is how we confirm that Emmett is cool, because he's doing something. It's the only scene in the movie we broke our rule that we want to never leave Mary. The rest of the movie, there's never a scene where we're not in her POV, we're not with her. This is the one time we break that. We tried not to. We actually did shoot her watching him pull it off through the fish tank, but the shot, it was just like the fish tank and just like her head. It was just, it did not work. But I think this firmly roots us in, okay, this is a guy totally trust. He's not behind her back talking to her and saying whatever. He's literally trying to like sneak around. So I just loved the vibe of that tone of that shot and really wanted to hold on to it.
I like it too, coming off the heels of like the montage of everybody kind of did like a lot of cuts, and then all of a sudden there's none. Like, you're watching this one thing play out in real time, and how deliberate he's being. I'm with you, man. J.J. Abrams was wrong.
Thank you. He let it through in the end. So, Cindy, you were gonna.
Yeah, well, it's funny that I'm gonna ask this question after you just said that scene is one of the only ones that you guys break from Mary. But your background comes from video games, and that feels very video game. Was that like intentional, or do you think subconsciously that is the types of stories that you gravitate towards and you wanted to tell it that way?
It's both those things. I took as much inspiration from my experience playing Half-Life 2 and Last of Us and Uncharted as I did from the movies that I watched, and the thing that I would always say about it is like, I find first-person shooters, first-person games, to be less immersive than third-person games. Even though first-person game, you are the character, it is you. But I feel like when we're linked to a character and watching their behavior, I can then relate and identify and feel more for that than when it's you, it's me. So, dear God, let me just say too, like figuring out this conversation where it's like, should he volunteer to be the guy? But then is that like he's putting down her because she's a girl? Like, but we want to like him, but he needs to be heroic in some way, but she needs to be heroic. Like, this was such a like, how do we do this? I think I don't remember what it is, but I think it's okay. So yeah, video games have always been a massive inspiration, and certainly for the filmmaking in this movie and the kind of movie that it is in general. This was a reshoot.
This whole scene?
Sorry, not a reshoot. This was an addition to this. This was we did not have in the initial script. There was a whole B plot where Howard's got like drugs that she like sedatives, and she realizes like, oh, that's what she's giving to Emmett, or that's what he's giving. And that was her like, oh, he's bad. And then she has to take a shower, and it's this tense scene of Howard dancing in the background, and she has to shower with no curtain, and is he going to come in or not come in? I just felt like the movie doesn't need it. We're not doing that the whole movie. I didn't want to be exploitive and showing her naked and not even just in a like because it's salacious, wrongfully salacious, but also it's just a go-to for a horror movie to like just look how vulnerable they are when they're, and a shower scene just felt like, yeah, okay, so we were trying to figure out how do we need some sort of thing where we feel like, he's on to us now. And I, probably to a fault, was hell-bent on like, we got to have a scene like Inglourious Bastards, like the forehead game. And the producer, like in longhand, like while we were shooting, like wrote this scene. And then we like did stuff to it. We made it worse. And I was like, you know what? Let's just shoot exactly what he wrote. So this scene is like literally from the hands of the producer.
It's so stressful.
Yeah. I really, it's one of my favorite. It might be my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's really great too because there's a weird layer of humor underneath it because he's so bad at this game. Also.
Right. Yeah, it's like on the one hand funny because he's bad.
Yeah,
he equates like all girls with princesses. Like it's storytelling, but also it works as a joke, but also like insight into his character. And I love watching the scene and just choose either Mary or Emmett to look at. And like if you just look at Emmett in the whole scene, it's hilarious. His reactions to what's happening next to him, you know what I mean? And like is he really? Yeah, anyway, it's great.
Real quick, just when we were talking about video game inspirations, John, who's following along on Twitter, wants to know what
I know what this question is.
Portal movie.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be another question. Yeah.
No. But
I don't know.
Is there a Portal movie in the works?
Bad Robot has been developing it since it was announced at DICE, however many years ago that was. I casually talked about it with them at one point. They Portal and Half-Life, both of them are awesome. I don't know if they're still. I genuinely do not change the people there and who their deal at studios and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't. My answer is I have no idea. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I'd probably have to say that anyway, but I also
even if you did have an idea.
My mannerisms that I actually have.
Oh, sure.
Now we have a barrel of acid.
So this is the barrel of acid, and this scene is another one like we talked about earlier at the dinner table. That is a really incredible, kind of slow play of an edit scene, also.
Yes, and God, the iterations that this went through. Initially, no barrel of acid in the scene. It was just he catches their stuff, and then I think he confronts them like in the hallway, like what is the stuff, and the whole thing takes place there. But we really wanted to like milk it, so we developed it into it all happening around this thing, and there was a version for a long time where he like pulls out the gun and gives it to and he's like, here, I'm gonna take it, go ahead. Like, I think milking it a little too much, and also I just feel like we wanted to forget about the gun. We wanted to think like something going to happen with the acid, and we're doing something, whatever. So when he pulls out the gun, we're like, ah, like it all happens so quickly that our breath is taken away. But there was yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just
No.
saying I'm having a hard time focusing on what you're saying. So stressed out watching this.
That's so weird. That's so awesome that it can affect in this format. The interesting thing, I've done a few thrillery things, and what I find challenging about them is, unlike other genres, like a thriller or horror, anything scary, not scary when you're reading it or writing it, not scary when you're shooting it, not scary when you're editing it and you've seen it over and over again, you know? So you really do have to trust the craft and the mathematics behind holding for tension when you release and what, you know? And you're not informed of it being scary until the reviews and people see it, you know? I did a Black Mirror episode after this that had a spider in it, and I thought it was a fun little visual. And I got all these like, oh my god, it's the scariest. I was like, really? It's just a, you know, but it's like, you know, you did some science there. You did some crafty things. Yeah.
But yeah, the gun just coming out of nowhere, and also the shot right before it kind of cuts back out, because like it invades Michelle's close up in a really uncomfortable way.
Yeah. And longer. Now we're longer here, pushing it on her.
And the sound design here is really cool too.
Yeah. We really didn't want to do this, the tinnitus thing, because it's a go-to, but it was unavoidable. Like we had to do it's emotionally right. We had to do it. You can't just
So did Emmett know that he was going to like volunteering? We already going into that scene, we know Emmett's like kind of naive. Like, was he naive enough to believe that he wasn't going to get shot in that moment and he was just going to kind of get a slap on the wrist? Or do you think Emmett knew it was coming for him when he was saving Michelle?
You know, I think this is the first time in his life where he's choosing to do something and not just going the way the wind blows. I would imagine he was hoping that it wouldn't be death, but had to take the risk just in case, because he didn't want that to happen to this other person. So, very early on, there was a note about let's have fun when we're in quarantine. They should be eating ice cream at some point. Instead of putting it in the montage sequence where initially we came up with this horrifying use of it by putting it here. And then also the shave was I was really hoping that he had just done a movie where he was shaved. He just did Trumbo, I think. And so I had before I met him, we had figured out, oh my God, we should do this thing where he, you know, and he was clean shaven. I was like, dude, starting today, please grow it in. I wish that he had gone to full bush before the movie started, but you know, it's still enough where it's significant that you see it's meaningful that he shaved. You know, it says something.
Well, there's a really nice sort of callback to how we first met him, with just like only seeing his legs for the first part of the scene.
Yep.
And then yeah.
There's some moonshine on that shelf too, I believe.
Oh, nice.
That we never see.
We actually got there was I lost it. Where did it go? Somebody following along on Twitter that said they were sitting there watching it with a swamp pop.
Oh my God!
So they're actually drinking some of that.
Oh, they're probably from New Orleans. I mean, swamp pop is an actual.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the. Oh, is it in Texas too? Clint?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Okay, so it might be super regional then.
Yeah. Well, there's another question from Receding Samson on Discord. If there are any sort of ornaments or objects in the bunker that you were passionate about having screen time that were either hidden or obvious, jumped out at us.
Tasty cakes. I'm from the East Coast. Tasty cakes are an East Coast version of like Twinkies or Hostess snacks that I grew up with. And Gallagher Jr. too is also from Delaware. I'm from Philly, so it was a thing for us. So they're there. I don't know if they. I think they might be in like one shot, barely visible.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some movies that are referential in his movie collection. They're all Paramount movies. That's what we have the rights for.
The one where they're watching the Cannibal Airline.
Pretty in Pink. Definitely about a girl who's building a dress. Was and with a conversation with her father was significant for us for sure. I think this was a comp. We did something. Why did we not shoot? Why were we not able to fit the camera? Oh, we weren't able to fit the camera. Pulling back over the thing, so that had to be a comp.
There's something too here about Howard and how capable a villain he is too. We talked a lot about it, like building. Michelle is very capable, but like Howard seems to be more or less on top of it every step of the way too.
It's tricky, man, for this, but this is another. But that wasn't that hard because Mary's awesome. But yeah, there was some requirements of the plot that needed him to not be aware of things. And there's some things that, but you also, you want to feel like this guy's formidable. But this figuring out this, I was like, we got to give it a line. We need the catharsis. She's got to have a line. But it's like, but it can't be hasta la vista, babe. Like, you can't do that. But it needed something, and I really feel very happy with that exchange. It took a long time for it.
Acid in the bare feet there too.
Yeah. It's just water. So don't be too.
You didn't pour acid.
Yeah, you can go ruining the movie for me.
I know. That shot I described a bajillion times. I always joke with it. I don't know why. It was like I always had to have meetings about she lands, and then we come around, and I don't know what it was. There's something about that shot that we all could. There's actually a digital effect here that I think is so cool, where his face is actually erasing as the shot goes on. Like it's growing, the acid growing, but it's so brief, and I think that took a little bit of a hit with the rating. We had to minimize it. I think we just desaturated a bit. This was like a huge day for me. Never doing any, and I was so serious, and it's like everyone else had worked on like giant explosion movies, and I was like, oh my god, the flame bar, like this fire. It was very exciting for me and no one else. I remember also it being such a head scratcher for me of like, she's got to crawl through. She can't be wearing the suit already because the suit would clearly just get ripped up if she was already, crawling around in this thing. So she's got to carry it, but there's no room to like just figuring out the whole like tying it to her was a thing. This is also, this did not feel like we got the scene, but the editor did a great job. He flopped some shots, repurposed some things, and I just felt like this was definitely going to be reshot, and we didn't really reshoot any of it. But there was a lot of deliberation about how needing the catharsis or not needing the catharsis of seeing Howard die on, like, can we get some finality in the shot where we're looking down? Do we see him in a pool of blood, or when, and how and what? And it was very tricky. And then it seemed to be okay with what comes later with the explosion that happens.
So I was reading something about the original script ending and that Howard doesn't die in that script. Were you attached to the project and part of that decision to rework this ending, or was that decision already made?
That draft of the script I've never read, and the version where Howard, that was very different in total. Howard was sort of a good guy, and Michelle was not treating him good the whole movie, like not good. And so in the end, when Howard was proven right, it's like she had to learn her lesson through the thing. It was all the characters, and Emmett was. Like Howard was good and Emmett was bad in that version. Like that, it went through those kind of flips and flops. So that was all changed. That was what they wanted to address before they even, I guess, or maybe when Damien was going to direct or whatever. Like that was well before my time. So like the version that I read always ended. The details of the end were different, and the creature was characterized differently, and it was all set during the daytime, and like it was that the beats were different in this ending coming up, but still it was. And then she gets out, and then the S hits the F, and it functions like no other movie functions, which is why I was so excited to make it. That rig inside of her, that was a nightmare. Trying to slim down the camera and building that thing, and like every frame that you see when we're in that sort of POV, that sort of sunshine in helmet POV, every frame that you see is the only bits of frame that were usable. After that, it slides, and it did not work.
So this feels like sorry, go ahead, Clint.
No, you go ahead. So
this is obviously a really pivotal moment because the film is kind of switching genres at this point. What kind of special care went into shooting this so that it wasn't too like jarring for an audience member? Like, what are you thinking about to make sure that it hit?
Well, by the way, I don't know that we stuck but it's staying with her for as long as possible before the shift. We definitely, there was versions where she runs to the house and it's Howard's house and we're in the house now. We're seeing more. Like, I always wonder, should we have kept Howard in the movie in spirit longer so that, we shifted to nighttime. At one point it was all during the day. I will always wonder if we kept it all during the day, would have felt like post-apocalyptic rather than horror movie. I worry about those things. But I love that it's like the sun is setting. It feels like a ticking clock. So I love the visual qualities of it for sure. I will say, I think a misstep sort of was that I think could inhibit it from feeling like its own genre. The whole movie shot anamorphic. This was shot spherically because at the time, before we had the idea of it being Cloverfield and all that, I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if this little movie could be released in IMAX, and the end of the movie, there's one of those shifts where we go into IMAX? Kind of like, by the way, her break, kind of like crying but laughing and whatever, like what she's going through. She did the exact same thing in Smash and was like, this moment needs whatever you had to go through there is what I think I asked her too, like, how did you, and she was like, had 102 fever. She was super sick and had to do the most physical stuff of the entire movie. I had no voice. I'd gotten sick too. I was like writing things. And so I think she was just like laughing at how ridiculous her life is at that moment, or not but getting emotional at that. So yeah, I didn't think so. I wanted the feeling of the movie switching to IMAX in a poor man's way. So I thought, what if we shoot the movie anamorphic and the ending it goes spherical? So in some theaters it will have a little bit of a shift, and there'll just be a different. Oh my God, the movie's open. I'm finally breathing. I'm getting daylight for the first time. Which is what I was going to say. What First Man ended up doing. Anyway, that was the idea the whole time. And then I found out that like some theaters, like they wouldn't be able to matte the screen because they're old theaters, so it'd be projected black. I was like, if we ended up doing this, and I was like, oh, that's good. And then the sound designer, who was also an assistant editor and just a good friend, big part of the project, said, Dan, like the movie's gonna look so much better if it's 2/4 out. Like the end, like look, let me just, and he like did the 2/4 framing on this end sequence, and it looked so much better. And I was like, right, fine. And so we ended up all my dreams of like the article in American Photographer about we did this unique thing where we went out the window, and we just did it. So there is, but I do regret then, like there might be a subconscious feeling about the ending where it just looks different because we shot spherically. But I also could be reading.
Well, that actually sort of already answers a question that we had somebody watching on IG and YouTube. Tom Rankin asked, "What is your biggest regret of the movie? What was an idea or scene that you had to cut?"
That it's a big part of it. It's a big one. I mean, I don't know. It's whatever. I wish that we know we were going to be. The joke of it. Sorry, the button of it is we're releasing IMAX. And then once we do the Cloverfield thing, it's like, oh, now we shot it IMAX. Like, so that's a regret. Just never know, and not feeling like we did the right curve into the ending. Is a regret, and I have some others that I'll keep private, but that's
fair enough.
That's the shareable one, I think.
So yeah, as we do get into the ending, it is a really compelling sequence here. Like I mean, like you said, shifting from dusk into full on night, and then just building out as far as a kind of a little action sequence goes. It's a really good one.
Thank you for saying that's awesome. Yeah, so there was a section of this that we're about to get to when she's running away, and she ran into a piece of farming equipment and runs up it and jump. It was a oneer, didn't work. It was a lot of it because we had to sort of cowboy switch to a stunt woman and then back to her, and it was a whole elaborate thing that felt really exciting while we were shooting it. Did not come together, and we were like, how do we get from this part of the chase to like her back in the truck? And we realized we could just put a giant house instead of the farming. The farming equipment's still kind of there when she looks at it, but beyond it, we put this house as the lure, and then concocted this whole thing where then the light shining through the ship. It's as if the ship and its little worker bee alien are kind of talking to each other and luring it in. So that was a whole thing that was not in the initial plan, and covering up my mistakes.
When it got into creature design for these, how much of that I know we've talked about the relationship with the original Cloverfield, and how much of that creature design was from scratch, or was there any?
It was all from
all from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, lucky to have Neil Scanlon, who was JJ was doing Force Awakens at the same time we were doing this, so we had his help in designing, and I was hell-bent on making these things organic, and JJ was hell-bent on there being tech and armor associated with them, just to feel like was good with sentience to how they travel to our planet if they're just animalistic. And so it became a designers listening to two directors with different ideas, like, oh, what if it's bioorganic, like biotech-y. I kept on referencing to, once we got there, I brought up, as you guys will be I brought up Gears of War, that are like, I love the idea that like the spaceship is like some space creature that like, instead of like pulling the rudder on a boat, it's like pulling on its organ will make it turn left or right. So it's like grafted on the tech on top of its organism so that's why it's got a mouth and it's whatever. And same thing with the little dog alien is like, it had a name. I forget what its name was, but it's armored on the front and then it's organic on the inside.
Yeah, pulling her helmet off right there was great. Like how terrifying is that? That
was a big I was very excited for maybe the movie would have a 3D release and like how cool that would be to like be there, see the teeth like from didn't happen, but this is all in Bad Robot. No, I'm lying. Some of it was in the garage at Bad Robot. Most of it was New Orleans Hirana thing. I've like on almost everything I've done, I've tried to redo the best part The best shot in a Jurassic Park movie is in Lost World, and it's when the trailer goes over the side and we're looking at her and she's falling towards us and then smashes the ground and we reveal, oh, we were looking at the trailer window. And the pilot for the show, the character is thrown towards the window. But every time I do it, it's for shots that last 15 frames, so it never. And so the same thing with her landing when the thing gets pulled up. I was so excited to like do the thing, and but
here's no chance.
That shot that I can never. I'm like literally like I'm pointing the finger now. Like one day I will use it better. And I'm just lifting it from someone, but it felt right to do it in that moment. But anyway, I
do love here, like as the car is dropping and hard cuts in black, like the symmetry between that and the car crash. I really enjoyed it from the beginning. That goes straight to the title sequence.
This was a regret, sort of, I really loved hard cutting to black and then having the ship come in the corner frame as if you thought we cut to black, but actually, no, we were just looking at the night sky and then the thing comes in. The effects were not, this was like 2 days before audiences we're still finishing the effects. And we went to the color and it was like, this is where the effects are now. What can we do? And then a very good idea was had that was painful for me to receive, which was, what if we just start soft focus? And but because of that, it then has to do that slow fade up from black. So we're not doing the gag of, anyway, this is my own Michigas, but you asked about regrets, that popped up.
Well, blame Tom Rankin on YouTube for that.
I will. So there is one test audience, the only time we tested it, that saw a version where more happened. She gets in the car, she's turning the radio on, and then a creature bursts through. So that shot, the Cloverfield Lane, that's the only thing we added after.
Got it.
So as a joke, our post supervisor said it would be funny if like we put a mailbox in there and she hits it and it says like 10 Cloverfield Lane, and we're all like, ha, 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 ha. And then like it got quiet and we were like, actually,
that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then we wound the shot and we saw, like we watched it and we're like, oh my God, we could literally put a mailbox right there. Her car, it looks like her car is taking the corner wild anyway, like, and it was awesome. But there initially something burst through and it was choking her, and she like looks in her rear view and sees the ship aflamed and drives the thing through the flames to burn it off. It was like a whole other sequence, and the test was unanimous. Like, we've had enough. Just, like in the movie, like it's going on. I was like, oh my God, it'd be great, But I was proven wrong.
Actually, about the mailbox time, there's a question from somebody, Nest on Discord, asking about the title. Did you guys have any other variation of a title with Cloverfield in it?
Nothing that anyone actually, so it was, but it was all like, is it the Cloverfield Files? Is it like the Book of Cloverfield? Like what, something that really sounded like anthology. And then we arrived on this. The movie, we never, and then, by the way, my other favorite part of the movie, this title scene. Yeah, I mean, it was the last thing to happen, and I kept on talking about the titles at the end of Inconvenient Truth. I feel like this was, I can't remember, it wasn't exactly like this, and we had these awesome guys pitch us ideas, and we figured this out, and like, the music, the way that it's dripping, it's not just like a quick little, it's moving in a very specific way, and I love the score here. Like, it's just all.
Yeah, it's a drip. Like dripping is the right way to describe it.
Yeah, I never thought about that, and I love the marketing for the movie. I feel like, there's that, I think it was like a Twitter thread going around that was showing like the 5 types of movie posters. And it's always so refreshing to see one that isn't that, but is still really effective.
I got to tell you, Yeah, it was. We saw variety posters. That was I have a whole. Speaking of titles, like I had a. I was early on, and I sold this to the studio. Like the studio was, or other thing was like, what if we called this movie Below, and then we make another movie called Above, and where now she's above ground, she's stuff, and then the third movie she's in space, and we call it Beyond. So it's below, above, beyond. And then the poster, I was like, the posters, guys. The first poster is like little bit of Earth up top, and then down below is, the second poster is like little strip of Earth here, and then all sky. We're above. And then the third poster is just space. Like, how cool, guys! I wanted to own those posters.
Just imagine them on a wall next to each other.
Literally, that's the only thing. The problem with that idea was then you have to call this movie Below, and there's already like horror movies called Below. Like it was like wrong. But the idea of the next one being called Above is bad. Like I just
think of the payoff.
I know. I just could not drive it home the whole way. So I love this post. I remember emailing someone or JJ or whatever it was, and I was like, when are we going to see like the other post? Like this was already out in the ether, and I was like, when do we get the poster? It's like John Goodman's face and Mary, and like no, this is it. The poster's like, oh, we don't have like then the character posters or the whatever. Like, no, this is it. I was like, wow, that's bold. But then we did get a very cool from the artist 8 Meets Girl, who I was a huge fan of. Did a special IMAX poster, which I don't know if you've seen, but it's a mailbox in the foreground of the house, and inside the mailbox you can see Mary pounding on the like little. It's awesome. And there's some shout outs in that poster, but that was just for IMAX. So, oh wait, am I lying? Was that there's other. We had these Bernard Herrmann things that I guess maybe they were for video.
You might just not be sure. I don't know if you're lying.
I'm not sure is the answer.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thanks for watching the movie with us. Man, it was really great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
If you don't mind, we got a couple other questions.
Absolutely.
For the end.
Absolutely.
First and foremost, the most important one: track down that Twitter user who was drinking Swamp Pop. It was at Karen and Kenta. They replied, said, "I'm not from Texas, but you can get Swamp Pop at World Market." So plug for World Market there. She's got she has that, or the user has that long-term shelter supply. So good for Karen and Kenta on Twitter having plenty of Swamp Pop. Just want to clear that up real quick.
Awesome.
But also, there is a user on Discord whose username is a whole bunch of XO983681904. What's your opinion on kaiju films like Godzilla, Gamera, Kong, Pacific Rim? And would you ever like to make a direct, straightforward kaiju film? And if so, which? It's like a 3-part question.
Probably. I mean, I was haunted by them growing up, like most of my generation and probably other generations. I loved watching them. They scared me. I think it's tricky to figure out a unique way in because now we've had quite a few. I have not seen the more recent Godzilla though. I just realized as I mentioned, there's one that I haven't seen yet that Bear did the score. But I like them. Yeah, I'd make one of those if I figured out a cool way to do it for sure.
There's another question from Dominic Mann, who was watching on YouTube on IGN. And this was a question that popped up from a couple of different people.
Okay.
But would you want to make a sequel to, assuming it's not Above?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I just spoiled it.
Yeah.
I always felt like there's definitely really cool way to do the next part of her story. That I would love to do. At the same time, there's something awesome about there never being a sequel to this, and I think it ends on a really beautiful little grace note for Journey, which is great. So I would if I could, but I don't feel that we need to.
there's something nice about her driving off towards the trouble that she was running away from in the beginning.
Yeah.
So that segues into another Alan Noah on watching on IGN. What movie do you want to do next? If you can talk about that.
I mean, I've got several things in the hopper. I don't know if we're going to be making movies again. But I'm chomping at the bit. Many of them have been announced. A few of them have not. So I'd be very excited to make any of them if the trigger can be pulled. I've been working very hard. One of the reasons why I've been doing so much TV after having done this movie, I haven't made another movie yet, is I've just been very hard at work on doing cool original things. Uncharted being a notable exception to that, but for when I was on it. But it's harder to make some of these original things, and I've just been pushing the boulders uphill and don't want to give up. I don't want to collapse under the weight of that yet. I still feel like I can keep pushing, and we'll finally get over the hill, and it'll be awesome. So been working on some TV stuff in the meantime. But yeah, there's definitely a bunch of really cool things. There's a Houdini movie I'm on that's awesome. There's this movie called Milk, M-I-L-K, Mom I'd Like to Kill. That is awesome. There's a bunch of others. Some are out there, some are not, in a way that people don't really know what they are, so I don't give it up just yet. But yeah.
Cool. There's another question. Well, first of all, really quickly, there's somebody on Twitter, Drew Taylor, wants to get the hashtag release the Valencia cut going. So if you see that on your timeline come up, go ahead and support that, I suppose. And then there's another question that a lot of people came up. A lot of people had Jacob Weaver being one of them, who was watching on IGN YouTube. If you know anything about the future of the Cloverfield franchise.
Nada.
Not a thing.
Nada. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I know nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody's bound. All right. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you joining us again. Thank you very much for being here. And everybody, thank you at home for watching. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. We've got Jurassic Park, actually, tomorrow night that we'll be watching, along with Joseph Mazzello, who played Tim.
I will probably be watching that. That is awesome.
Well, I'll have to tell him that the best Jurassic Park shot was actually from the sequel that he's not in.
Now am I regretting that? Maybe I'm regretting that. There's a great, by the way, to get ahead of it, guys, on YouTube, there is a behind-the-scenes moment that I've never seen for any of other Spielberg stuff. That is a scene where Spielberg and Mazzello and Ariana Richard, the girl, they're talking about the Jeep scene, and it's like a long, unedited shot of him discussing the scene with them and blocking it, and it's awesome. So ahead of tomorrow, watch young Joseph working with the legend in all its behind-the-scenes glory.
Great. Well, we've all got some homework.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again, man, and everybody again. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow night here on Watch from Home Theater.